Okay, so let's start coding our module and implement the related things that handling a form would do. Because there's going to be several things you'll see going forward that we'll implement into this module. So after you finish the last one and you've come through the checkpoint, hopefully you have a better understanding of why we implement modules. And there's just so many, right? So just to highlight a couple, modularity, of course, reducing complexity, easier maintenance. There's also a scope issue, and this is something that preventing global pollution. So going forward, know that part of why we want to limit globals is that it can cause unwanted issues because there's too many things that could either get overwritten depending on how you've set it up. But in this case, just think about it. It just makes our code a little easier to reason about. So as I move over to my editor, and even though now having minimized the comments, this code is going to grow, of course, because our app.js is coordinating all the things that's going to happen. This is going to become a larger and a larger file, and specifically when we handle form submission and form clear, then it's a natural thing to think about. Let's implement and code a module. So you've learned about the basics, so now let's actually put this into action. Now I have the comments up and I want you to add a couple, which is just your part 1 in your form.js file, form handler.js. And you can see I've already done this for mine. We're going to collect all the relevant inputs from the form. Now for this particular one, we may end up actually with these other ones, but for now we'll focus on household member size. But I went ahead and left those in there. So then we have our two functions, and then I also added clear all input fields here. So now what we want to do is look at our functions in our app.js, and again I'm using this split editor view because it just is going to make my life easier. And so in this case, let's start with the clear. Okay, so for the clear, we've called the function here. We know it works, so now we have to think about what things are we going to move over into our function. Well, in this case, these are the two lines. So where we call the carbon footprint, we reference the form, we do a reset on it. We learned about that last time, where we look at the value, we reference the value and household members input, right? And in this case, we're setting it back to 1, even though we're doing a reset. And this again is just a safety thing in case something happens that somebody changes the form even after doing a reset. So these are the two items. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to copy them for now, and I'm going to come over to here and I'm going to place them in here. And one of the things, and by the way, right, if I haven't, I know I've talked about this, but this is the benefit of having that reformat the document or the selection. It can help you do. Now in this case, I'm also going to come over here and I'm going to command / or Apple / in my case. For yours it could be window / to comment these things out. And so what you want to think about is even before you run it, right, the idea of modules is also scope. So there's a scope inside of here. So when we run these two lines, it's actually looking for a reference that we have in the app.js. So we don't have those specifically in our handler. If you've ever run into this, actually because of the way we've written this one, it is there. But we're going to go ahead just for purposes of clarity, and we'll take these two lines. So we're going to take let me do it again. We're going to take the form reference and then the query selector on the form to get the household members. Okay, so then we'll come up to here and then we'll place those in here. Now I haven't commented them out because we still will need them, and we could figure out based on going forward why we could figure out, and which ones could we remove because they're not needed here. They're only needed over here. Something over time you'll learn about. So for now, let's see, I already have my live server running. So what I would do here is I'd go over to here, I'd look at my sources, I'd look at my form. Matter of fact, I'd probably set my breakpoint. Oh, I already have it set here at the form handler to clearForm. Okay, so I could come down here and I can say clear. I see that it hits the form, the import of the JS file, and it references, in this case, the function. And we hit run, or hit step, and so now we're going to do that reset, no issue, and then we're going to reset that, and we're going to clear the form, and we're good to go. Okay. Oh, I must have hit a reload there. So, and you know, one thing I was showing on the dev tools is like when you get to the end, when you know your code has stopped, you can just hit play through, and it won't bring up that other file that is for specifically your live server. Okay, so now that we've done that, let's actually, and we did this, we moved code to clear, right? And we copied the references over. So now we're going to do the same for the inputs. Okay, so let's come over here, right? So in this case, for the inputs, because we're passing event into it and we don't want to have to pass it over to here, really all we want to do over in this function, right, is actually this. Okay, so let's go ahead and copy that. Come over here, and in here, right, because we have the input, shouldn't be a problem, right? And in this case, think about what we want, because what we're going to have eventually is we're going to have this getForm function do something. If you've never done coding, you may not have been introduced to, because right now this value is only going to be available to us inside of this function. But we really want to have that available, you know, in more parts of our code. And in this case, we're going to define a variable here. So let me just show you what I mean. What we can do here is instead of defining or declaring and assigning a value, a variable with the value that comes back from this expression, what we can do here is get rid of this and just do return. Okay, now notice what happened. And if you didn't, it was somewhat subtle on the console.log, because whenever JavaScript hits this line, which it hits first, okay, as soon as it does, nothing else happens, because it returns, in this case, execution back to whatever that called it, okay? So over here, what we would do, in this case, we're no longer, this is going to be handled, and we'll get rid of it, by this, okay, by this function, and then it's going to return that value. So all we have to do here is take, and actually I'll have 2 semicolons here, okay? So now, and again, this is a pattern very common in programming, where you do something, right? You determine a particular value, or in this case, we'll end up changing it later. But this idea of a return, I want to actually have you see. But before we do that, let's actually do this. Let's actually go here, right, and put that beforehand. And again, if you didn't see it when it was there, right, you can immediately see it do a different color, okay? So, and whenever you're coding and you see that, just know that your return, as soon as your JavaScript execution runs this, it returns control. Matter of fact, let's just go ahead and watch that happen, because it is so important. So now, over here, right, so let's hit a breakpoint here, and now we'll just hit the other button for calculate. So now it's going to run this. And by the way, right now, if we hit step into, this has not even been declared yet. Okay. Has it? I should actually, yeah. So there's nothing in there as of right now, because we haven't run this. So this runs, this executes, and then returns that value to be then stored in this variable. So we come over here, we go ahead and run our console.log, and then we're going to evaluate, or JavaScript's going to evaluate this expression, right? And then what it's going to do is it's going to step, and when step happens, it executes the line, and now we're back. And now our variable inside of our app is now declared and assigned that value from that return. And that's a really important thing to understand, okay? Is now, and let's actually just go ahead and do this. We're going to copy this into here just so we have a little more clarity about returning household member to app.js, right? In this function, or the app.js handle form function. Okay, so that's what this is. It's returning it to there. All right. So, and this again, I've kind of made this one a little bit shorter because I just want you to see the process that we're implementing and coding up. You know, that's the idea here, is we coded up the clearForm and then getForm inputs. Okay, so now your only additional, and there's a couple things, but in this case, the most important is to explain the importance of return values in JavaScript, because that is something you'll see again and again. Now, just a little foreshadowing before we quit this one is right now we're returning one value, but think about our form, right? In our form, we have household members, number in household, we have a household size, we have a diet choice, and we have how much packaged food to eat. Do you eat? So 1, 2, 3, 4. So in this case, we have to, and I think it's the next one I have this set up for us to discuss, is how do we actually return that type of data structure? Because in this case, it's only going to return one value once this is executed. So just keep that in mind as we move forward. Go ahead and complete your Get workflow, and let's see the message for this one. There we go. All right, see you on the next one.